a bit later.
Yes. Yes. In a separate hangout. After I've really prepared for it. So yes, we are talking about. Hi, folks. We are talking about the mirror relationship today, and I will start to do my my thing I'm known for, sharing screens. And it's this one, nothing embarrassing, sharing the right thing. So what we got here? We have in the Model A, oh, it's there, square 2 to square 1. So the mirror of EJ-R&D, ESTP, his mirror is ISTP. ENTP, their mirror is my type, INTP. And so, if we then look at a different Model A, if we look at Crystal's and Maria's Model A, we can then just use the same principle of, oh, we find the mirror by going from square 2 to square 1. So again, FENI. And then we get, yes, the mirror, ENFJ. And so this is one of the benefits of calling the types by the functions, is you see all of these patterns much more readily. And so, for instance, I would refer to a type as knifey, as in IFE, because then I can instantly see the whole Model A in my mind, and then I don't have to convert. So, and then I'll show the one for me, 2 to 1, so ENTP, NETI, and then we can look at just some quick ones. So, for instance, oh, we've done that there. So NETI, so ENTP, INTP, ISFJ, ESFJ, INTP, ENTP, ESFJ, ISFJ, and then we've got like ESTP, ISTP, INFJ, ENFJ, ISTP, yes, ISTP, ESTP, ENFJ, INFJ, bit of repetition there. In fact, I just need to do these over here then. So ENTJ and INTJ, ISFP and ESFP, ENFP and INFP, ISTJ, ESTJ. Oh, that's it then. So, and now we can, now I can end the share screen, and now we can talk about the bullet points that I have. I have these relationships are very well suited for friendship, and they usually have common interests, values, and hobbies. Mirror partners are often good friends. They find it interesting to spend time together, and it's something here they may lack openness while communicating. So, Crystal, Maria, how do you feel that with ENFJs?
Would you like me to go first, or did you have something to say, Maria? Me first? Okay. I believe I have a brother that is ENFJ, and we do have a lot of the shared interests and communication. It seems like there's so much potential for me to really relate to him, but for some reason there isn't as much trust. It's like they emphasize so much their lead, which is something I use creatively, that I don't trust that he will understand. And so I end up doing a lot of listening, but I don't do as much sharing. And I think as he being an extroverted feeling dominant, he can pick that up, and I think it frustrates him. So he's continually initiating, and I've noticed that when we do spend more time together, that then we will argue, even though we sound like we're saying the exact same thing, where he and I will actually agree, but we both keep trying to emphasize the opposite section of something. So when we're talking about relationships with our family members, for example, I will be talking about the importance of remembering the long term and where I see it going, and he's emphasizing the emotional state of how things are right now and what we're going to do about it to make everybody happy right now. And so we both want the same thing, but we can't seem to agree on how to always go about it. And it feels weird because I'm sure people watching us would just kind of shake their heads, like, what's happening here? Because it sounds like they're saying the same thing, but they just keep talking and keep talking. And so maybe that's what that means by not a lot of openness between you, that neither one is really saying the full thing that they think. I don't know why that happens with him, though, but it's a pattern. What do you think, Maria?
I would say that there is a few issues. Like for one, my son is ENFJ, and he tends to sort of ask for feedback, tell me his stuff, and ask for feedback, but he will always do his own stuff. It's just because we're aware that we think in completely different terms as far as the outcome.
Interesting. Why does it say? Do you ever feel that you assume you want the same thing and then find out it's not, or you can tell right away that you don't want the same thing?
Oh.
Did she freeze, or did my question not make sense?
No,
sorry, I have to mention that I have kids around, and sometimes they're loud and or want attention or something. So if I don't respond, just go on with your own stuff.
Okay.
Oh yeah, that's fine. Because generally, I think when do I hang out with Maria? Like if I was to go through the Model G profile, I could do it with you, Crystal, because then we could fill time. If these things happen.
Sure. Okay.
And then what we got here? So what you mentioned there, that's like one of the bullet points.
Oh, really?
That's just about to come up, so we've burned that one.
Oh, what was it? What was it? Not so good, but it's true.
Yeah, it's true. Looking at something from a different point of view. What I got here is just to remind people that mirror types are like, if one of them's a sensor, both of them are sensors.
Yes.
If like they're either both sensors or both intuiting types. And I remember Dario's admonition that like they're not intuitives, they're intuiting types.
Intuiting
types. There's a difference between a verb and a noun. They are not what they do.
But anyway, another issue with mirror types is that they have conflicting. I mean, they have the same interests, but they have conflicting thinking styles. So in our case, it would be that the vertical type can, the dialectic type seems to predict, like, read into my head. That's what he thinks he does. And I, as a vertical type, I can go off in any direction. So it really, I know people who expect people to read into their head, and they're offended if you don't. But I get offended if people try to read my mind.
Yes.
If we
that's just an example of conflicting thinking styles.
Yeah, if we let people know about the thinking styles, like I think vertical synergetic is like a supervision ring. So that would be like, oh dear, I've got to look at the Model A. So it sort of goes round in a loop. So what we got here? We've got we'll have
ENTP, INFJ, ISTJ, and ESFJ.
Yeah,
our vertical types.
Isn't it?
So is that within the quadra?
No, thinking styles are like left dynamics, right dynamics, left statics, right statics.
Okay.
Is it, Maria? Is it in a supervision ring? So it's like INFJ,
Yes.
ESFJ.
Yes, it's supervision ring. Yes.
Yeah. And then it's ISTJ, and then ENTJ, and so they're all.
I see.
Yes. That's what I was saying.
Yeah, sorry. I thought you said a different type.
Sometimes it's hard to hear what I'm saying because my son is reading the book next to me, and it's pretty.
It's okay. And then the ENTP one, which is dialectical algorithmic, is it sort of goes around. It goes around in the opposite direction when you're reading around the ring, and so that would be like oh yeah, so it sort of goes anti-clockwise, I think. So like ENTP, ISTP, ESFP, and INFP. Right. So yeah, I should really show this on the.
We can do that. Might be a good video separately too, since those rings sound like they're very complex. But it would be interesting. But trying to return to talking about how that works with a mirror relationship, I think sometimes I expect that because I understand. Oh, you have introverted intuition. That means we're gonna just understand each other right away. And because he's an FE lead, that doesn't work, and I get frustrated because I don't understand why not. So that explains it to me. That's very interesting. You know, that he probably does think that I can read his mind, or that I should read his mind. And so when we're what it feels like arguing to me but saying the same things, I am trying to get him to explicitly tell me what he's thinking, and he's like, don't you know what I'm saying? And I'm like, not really, please clarify. So we kind of go in that circle and do that dance.
Maria, could you give us an example of like a short thumbnail sketch of how INFJs think with their cognitive style?
I will probably return to it later because I need to say something so I don't forget. There are also like temperaments are sort of conflicting. And, one of the reasons we don't understand one another on a lifestyle level is ENFJs are not visual like we are, and the way some ESPs or EPs may be in general when they need it. If I ask my son to vacuum or wash the floor, he will just go through the motions. He will not control the outcome visually, because he's about the process being the right type, and he's not visual but like motion type.
Oh, interesting. So you mean like he doesn't visualize what it should look like when it's done for him to know that he's done a good job?
He doesn't even have that way of thinking. He's not after the results.
How old is he?
He just turned 21.
Oh, right.
Interesting.
But I mean, he's doing a pretty good job with his life. He just does it completely different to the way I used to do it. And he actually benefited from moving out.
Right.
So, for the MBTI people watching, when Maria talks about temperament, she's talking like EP, EJ, and then
IPIJ.
Right.
Yeah, but sort of like Socionics will.
And the third thing,
I'm
sorry, I tend to forget stuff, so I will talk about this. It's every type tends to romanticize their role function in a way. So that's one of the reasons they run into conflict with mirror types, because everybody tends to romanticize and promote something which is break functions for the other. For INFJ, it may be like quality of work, for instance, or the like comfortable and what's the word? Just charming home, for instance. And ENFJ doesn't see it this way. He likes it classy, but he doesn't pay much attention to his house otherwise.
So for me, what you were saying there about the role function, Maria, that's how I view ENTPs, because of their weak FI. I'm sort of like contemptible. of them for that. And I think INTPs are half jealous of ENTPs and half hold them in contempt. Because they sort of see them as a more, maybe INTP will see ENTP as a more outgoing, popular version of themselves, but also they will do things that are like, whoa, that's inappropriate. So it's like, that's how I feel about ENTPs.
Sometimes I think that about ENFJs when they are trying to help, but it feels overbearing. You know, when my brother's giving my sister advice in the same room, and I can pick up that he didn't see where that comment was going to lead in her reaction to him, then it's uncomfortable for me. Interesting.
My son used to think, he was surprised when I mentioned I'm an introvert. Partially because he's not as visual and he doesn't really, he's not really as observant as introverts maybe. He's more superficial as far as in relations to people. So he may not notice some things about other people. It's just tendency to see the mirror partner as similar to yourself and run into bad surprises.
That's perfect. That's exactly what happens with my brother.
You were saying something there, Maria, about romanticizing the role function.
Role function.
I think that's true. It's probably why I feel a sense of inadequacy around ISFJs or ISTJs, and I mean it in the MBTI-IJ. So sorry.
Yes.
I should. So when I'm in my ISFJ's mother's home, and I see how good she is in the kitchen and some of the details that she puts in the decorating of her home, I will come home and try to do that. But I tire of it quickly. I don't have as much energy for it. And I think romanticizing is probably what I'm doing, because I have this expectation of I should be more like that, but I'm really not. That's really hard for me to do. I would like to be better and try to mimic what she's doing. With that, is that a good example of romanticizing the role function?
Yes.
Okay.
And for you, Ben, it may be that ENTP romanticizes like things like power and dignity, which you may think are superficial, and so you hold them in contempt.
Yeah, it's just their inappropriateness.
Yeah.
It's still, because for me, it's like the way Victor describes the role function is where you've got to like continually train it and sort of like watch it carefully. So like the INTP is like continually watching for how they relate to people, and so it's like it's because it's their FI role. So like relations with people, but it's like they have to be disciplined.
For me, actually, romanticizing the role function is one of the diagnostic criteria that usually works. For instance, Immanuel Kant, you remember?
Yeah.
He was saying things like things about the moral law being like the starry sky inside me. So it's romanticizing the FI.
Although we have to be careful sometimes with these philosophers, it's like, imagine which societies they're in, and they have to be very careful not to annoy powerful people. Or they might end up like Socrates. Drink this, hemlock.
Sure. Do you think you do that though? Does that ring true for you, Ben? Do you relate to that? Have you heard that before, romanticizing FI as an INTP?
Well, for me, as I've gotten older, I see the importance of it as thinking a lot about, this is to, but also with writing, I feel like, does this feel right? That doesn't feel right. Or I might write something that is funny, and it's like it doesn't feel right. And it's just that feeling of, oh, it's like almost like a little conscience that develops. And so when you see that as a weakness in yourself and something to work on, and then when I see ENTPs and ESTPs that are very bad at that, it's like, well, I know that's the weakness and they're really bad at it, and it sort of like reminds me of that in myself as well. That's how I see it. Because you generally, as I've gotten older, I've sort of learnt to realise to not like the inner, because I'm looking so carefully for what is appropriate and is not appropriate, and so I see that failing in other people. It's like when someone becomes a perfectionist about something, they'll then look at other people at that same thing as well to see what it's like. So what else have we got? We've got so there's an idea here. Oh yeah, the mixture of rationality and irrationality. Maria could talk more about that, because it's like, so for instance, you've got like ENTP with INTP. You've got a clash of irrationality and rationality. Even though in MBTI they're the same, both perceivers, in Socionics they're different, but it seems to be very subtle. But it would be...
Yeah, explain maybe more about what that, how Socionics defines rationality and irrationality, if you would, Maria. Is she there? She might not.
Okay.
There is like I'm not ready to give a correct definition, but it's more like the rationals like to have everything. They like to have everything planned and sort of worked out, and the irrationals, are those people who go with the flow or with the way situation develops. But it really depends on the subtype. I cannot say that it's such a great distinction between rationals and irrationals regardless of their subtype.
Okay, and maybe the topic
matters more.
Yes. So being flexible or inflexible, is that a good word for it?
Yeah, sort of. Like where you're coming from your like decision-making processes or from the situation itself. It was like a thumb. The rule of thumb is if you see a person like going down the hallway somewhere, and if they make a sharp turn and go and suddenly go back, it's usually an irrational.
I do that all day long.
For me, it's like...
But it's not like walking back and forth like the ENFJ sometimes does.
Right.
Walking back and forth. It's going somewhere on purpose and then changing your mind all of a sudden and going back.
That's funny.
For me, it's... The JP thing is really tricky for me, for introverts, for me, and it also might be my subtype being a bit more... It's like, in my mind, I'm a judger, but when it comes to implementation, I don't implement
That's convenient.
plans.
Yeah, that's funny.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't quite catch that, Maria.
She said that's convenient.
Well, it's just like, and then when you read Victor's profile, and it's like, oh, they have these great business ideas, but they can't implement the plans. And then there's an INTP that writes, I think it's personality junkie. Now Jeff hates it from the point of view, he thinks like this DA Genthrope writes rubbish profiles of sensors, but like for intuitives, he writes these brilliant things, like he'll talk about the JP problem for introverts. He'll talk about like introverted, like he'll talk about INTP, introverted judger, extroverted perceiver, and that sort of battle between TI and the NE. And you might notice in your own husband,
Yeah. Well, he's different than you as a TI subtype,
Yeah.
so you guys would be good as a comparison.
Mm. But it's like the rationality is there in terms of organized, but with the NE, and it's like, well, I'm getting different ideas, and then, but it's like, it's the actual TE, it's the TE and FE that really come off as, you can see, like, this is a judging person, as like a TE person is like really organized in implementing stuff, and so, whoa, judger. And it's like with the FE person, like they're organized with people, and
well,
they're organized
that's a
with
good
the world.
example. My brother on his wedding, for his wedding, he did way more of the planning and the organization than his wife. He created a PowerPoint of like the procession of how things are supposed to flow. He did a diagram of like where the tables are going to go for the luncheon. Like he organized the entire thing, and the problem was is he doesn't really have strong SI, and so he kept asking for a lot of feedback because he could tell there were details missing. He didn't know what they were, but he needed to have it organized and very structured. And it was hilarious because it's not the bride doing this, it was the groom.
Yep. One thing I can show you is, and it's actually in David Kurz's profile as well.
For INTP, you mean?
Yeah, he mentions this. It is right. Yeah, just got to go to the correct folder. David Kurzy. These are like scans from. I'm all right to show these because these are like on the internet, and he won't kill me. What we got here? TINE, and then right, the profile. I'll just show you the profile where. So the please understand me too. When you read through the profiles and actually like categorize them by function, they really do match. Like especially INTJ, like any Socionics person who is reading like please understand me too INTJ profile and the INTP, if they mix them up, they are either ignorant or a troll because it's so obvious which is which. Because so for instance, when they talk about the INTP, it talks about the INTP needs an efficient support staff in order to capture all their ideas to implement them. Well, that doesn't sound like INTJ. That sounds like INTP. They need a whole staff to help implement their ideas to get the best out of them. And so I can just show that. And so because we're gonna do, I'm gonna go with, in future I'm gonna go through this profile with Dave, Kersey, June. Right, so, but the point I'm trying to look for is where he talks about an organization. I thought this was funny about when he mentioned NFs, although we've got two NFs here, they might be offended, but put here, the cognitive scanning of INTPs is not global and diffuse like an NFs.
Wait, I didn't follow. Where is that? Say it again.
Right at the bottom.
Oh.
The cognitive scanning of INTPs is not global and diffuse like an NFs.
Global and diffuse? What is wrong with global?
I know. I was just thinking of like the stereotype of the NF that's like the NFP type. So what we got here? So then when he talks about, it's the implementation thing that particularly struck me. Right, okay, here about not good at clerical jobs, impatient with routine detail, and then this bit was, if an organization is to use their talents effectively, architects must be given an efficient support staff who can capture their ideas as they emerge before they lose interest and turn to another idea. So any Socionics person reading that can't think that is Balzac. They've got to get that right, or they are a total troll.
What do you think, Maria? Are they a troll? I don't know.
I missed some of it, sorry.
It's okay. Do you agree that that really reflects what an INTP is and not the INTJ?
You mean that you need
So
to take...
LII versus the ILI, that they need a support staff to capture their ideas before they lose interest.
I think INTPs have a text like a copybook for everything. They are good at writing things down.
yes, we have to write them down. It's then following the ideas is like
one of my favorite books for children is about an INTP, and he had like a notebook for everything he was studying. Would it be astronomy or physics or another language? He was every time he was studying.
Yes.
I think it really reflects what they do.
How would a TI subtype of a LII differ? Is that different? Would that be adjusted? Would they maybe stay in one area more?
The about ILI is they hate to waste time.
Yeah.
Especially on doing things the way somebody thinks is proper. They do minimalistic work on that. So usually they work to at least do it as proper as is workable, but they will not be as thorough as an INTP.
Yes, that's true.
So for an ILI, time is the blood in their veins. If you ask them to dedicate time, it's like bloodletting.
Yes,
It's true.
Like for hangouts, Dario wants a set time, like 2 hours. That's it. That's when he's going to leave because he's got his plans. Although, I mean, I interviewed him. It was over 3 hours. I thought that must have gone well. The fact it was but we lost half of it. Right. So.
How would an ENTJ and INTJ work together? That's another example of a mirror. And if they're both, is only the INTJ that strict and rigid and controlled about time? ENTJs.
I think psychologically they work well together because they sort of provide one another with some psychological commodities, I would say. Because in their social block, they have some functions which the other one needs.
What's considered the social block? I'm sorry, you're referring to more of socionics than I know about.
It's just they're like mission block, which is the management or base function, and the creative, according to Victor, function.
Right, I'll show that one then. I'll get that one on screen.
Then the creativity block is the manipulative function and the demonstrative function. The social block is the launch and role functions, and there's like the weakest functions which are left.
That makes sense. That makes sense that they could rely on each other for that.
So in our case, INFJ may do a fairly good job of setting some structure or explaining logic of something for an ENFJ, which they value. And the ENFJ may provide some some SE parameters, like he may be like magnanimous or provide some initiative, support, which sort of INFJ sometimes fail to do things for themselves because they don't feel it's important enough. And the mirror partner may help with that because he may be pretty sure about something being important.
So Maria, what were you saying before, just so that people can like catch up with what you're saying? You were talking about mission block and social block, because I can now show people that.
Yay. That's ours. That's our INFJ one right there.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think that's true. With my brother, he will take me shopping and be like, "You need a new jacket. We are going to find it." And I hate shopping, but he makes me get out there and does it. And I think it's one of those things, like you said, of doing something for yourself. It's not that important, you know.
Do you think that might be on a eHarmony criterion that a lot of men might put their ideal match? A woman that hates shopping.
Did that make you happy to hear there's such a thing?
I just thought a lot of men might think yes.
Yeah, I am on deck that way.
Right, so if we go back to... Right. We're getting a... If we go back to the diagram, if we get...
Can I ask a question while you're looking for something?
Yeah, go on.
I read once that for the mirrors, they stimulate each other's creativity. Is that true?
At least I know they value each other's creativity. There was an episode in my own relation with my son ENFJ when he noticing that I usually give away my artwork and nothing stays at home. He told me he wants to pay his some of his allowance money for something I made, just so it stays in the family.
Yes.
That
yes.
was really supportive, because it's nice to know that somebody in the family actually values what we do. And he was like 10 or 9.
Wow. So yeah, it's innately just something he cared about. That's great. Yeah. I think that's one of the reasons my ENFJ brother will send me texts and pictures of his work and things that he's done. We do a good job of being each other's cheerleaders. You know,
Yeah,
I don't know how that relates for Ben, though, since he's so critical of their poor use of FI. Do you ever feel like you want to cheer on an ENTP, Ben?
Oh dear. It would depend on what. It would depend on the individual.
Okay.
And if they were an ENTP I approved of. So, for instance, I can talk about an INTJ that I approve of a lot.
But that's not mirror.
Yeah, no, but it's just an example of like somebody of a type that I don't generally. But like how people can be good individuals, even though if they're the type that usually is a bit
lacking in that area.
Yeah. So, for instance, the guy that helped me with all those fancy diagrams,
yes.
His Facebook name is Tom Gascon. I won't say what his real name is, but and so he did that, and he's actually an INTJ that loves to help people. When I asked about his Enneagram, he said he's an Enneagram 3 wing 2. So what a great INT! If all INTJs were that, like this wonderful desire to like be successful and help people, that would be great.
Yes. My ENFJ is an Enneagram 3 wing 2. They are very helpful people.
Yeah. My son always brings me something that he made, maybe as a design director. He's an editor-in-chief of some.
Order.
It's okay. She'll come back.
He's an editor-in-chief of something.
That sounds good for 21.
So like I said,
yeah.
so the square.
Anyway, whatever he makes, he usually brings for me to appreciate and sometimes to give feedback on because he's interested in what I'm gonna say. Their mirrors usually are good at analyzing each other's work. So when he had to write an essay, he would just sit down with me and use me as a sounding board.
Yes.
Because his logic is sort of, I mean, it may be good, but it's pain in the neck to use. It works better for him if he has somebody to brainstorm with.
Yes, yes. And that's true, I would think, for most of the extroverted half of a mirror relationship, that they like to talk things out with the introverted version of their mirror. Do you think that's true? I mean, I know my brother does that. He will call.
So.
Yeah. He'll call and bounce things off of me. It's my wife's birthday. I was thinking of doing this. I was thinking about that. And I don't use him for that very often, but that is a dynamic of our relationship too.
Well, since it's my child, I try to kind of do the same, so he's aware of the way things are going. But maybe as a rule, it may be more typical for extroverts. I also use my friends in the same way to kind of bring out some thoughts that I may be stuck unfinished. I mean, for me, it's also like thinking is pain in the neck. For both of us, it's a weak function. It's in the super id, I believe.
But Maria, you're an Enneagram 5.
But actually, to think about something which actually has to do with my own life, that's not
different.
That's not an Enneagram 5 thing.
Right.
Enneagram 5s are good with abstract calculations or speculations, but to think about something that actually worries you, you need to fish it out. And talking with somebody who's generally nice to you and shares your values, it's very important. That's why mirrors are great for that.
I need to find more mirror friends. I think my brother, he's 9 years younger than I am, and I think that might add to the dynamic of the way that we necessarily rely or don't rely on each other. Because he is so much younger, some of the things that I would be facing, he hasn't even experienced yet. So I would need to feel like I was talking to a peer ENFJ. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the notes that Victor has is, and I've sort of called it double dates, it says that the relationships are even better when a third person is present who is the jewel of one of the partners and the activator of the other.
That was too much. Say it again. Sorry.
Yeah, I called it double date, but then I realised that it's just 3 people. It's like, so I think it's saying it's better if say say you got INTP and ENTP, and then ESFJ turns up, and then the ESFJ is the jewel of one, and the activator of the other. The Victor thinks that relationship.
It's enhancing the mirror interaction.
I think so. But
I think even having a reference point person like that is good for the relation.
Yeah. To even
if
just
you
be
have
talking
somebody you both know, you can use them as an example. For instance, my son and me have a reference point as my father, his grandfather, and sometimes I use him as an example of when I want to explain something to my son, because he understands the values which are more clearly expressed in the sensory part of the quadrant.
Maria, I think there might have been because I'm hosting the Hangout, there might have been a big freeze for about 10 seconds, because both Crystal froze,
Oh,
and
I
then
did.
yours and Maria's sound went silent. So
Weird.
if you could
My sound
restate.
went silent when somebody, one of the kids, hit the airplane mode on the
Right.
computer.
Aeroplane mobbed.
Airplane mode. Right?
Oh right.
It's
Oh
like,
sorry.
it means that the internet is not really working.
Oh right. Oh, so you pressed that button.
Well, they sometimes run up to me and push buttons on my computer. They're like 2 and 3, you know.
Oh right. So it's not just an SP thing. It's the fact that-
It's a little child thing.
Wow.
So is there more about the mirror relationship? We covered pretty
Yeah. Oh yes. It's halfway through. We've got, but yeah, Maria, what do you think of the idea that Victor's put that if a third person that's added, like I said, with the example, if you've got INTP and ENTP and then you add an ESFJ, does that make the relationship better between the two mirrors?
I would say that I was trying to say that it's good to at least have somebody you both know. Because adding somebody is not always an option.
Right. My brother and I are mirrors, and I come from a large family, so I'm always using siblings as examples. But I have a sister that's an ESTP. So she would be my dual, and is she my brother's activation? Is that right? So when we're all together, it brings out different sides in all of us, but I always feel, as the sole introvert, that then the conversation for me gets lost because they're connecting more on an SE level, and I can do that better with either of them separately. So I don't know how I feel about that theory, that it kind of ignites something for the mirror relationships. It might give us more to talk about later. Like once we're not together and we've had that shared experience, it probably triggers things that then we can talk about later. But I don't know about being in the same moment together that it has a good effect.
I would rephrase it in a following way. If each of the mirror partners have been affected by the people from the same quadra or just representing their weak functions. So it's better if they are developed to the point by contact with the, like for us it would be the logic and sensory part. If they have developed that or seen good examples, then the relationship works better. Because having both weak functions of the super id uncovered and without good experience would probably mess the relationship up completely. I have pretty good relationship with my son because I'm not afraid of sensory things, and I can put on the like ESTP face and say, okay, you're doing this right now.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard that's a little bit. We've talked to Krista about this. You're not as enamored of the ESTP, are you?
I like to watch on movies or read in books things that probably fall under that category, but in a personal relationship, I think because my sister is ESTP and she's 16 months younger than I am, and so she's been a part of my life forever, since her birth, that I don't know, I don't have that same craving for the need of duality in other relationships. Like I can just go to her for that. I don't have a romanticized idea.
I have an ESTP father, so whatever he could provide for me, it's sort of with me for the rest of my life. I have absorbed.
Right.
So I'm not really after my duels in the same way. I enjoy movies about them, like True Grit or something.
Yes, I love that show.
but I don't necessarily need a partner.
That's interesting.
So you
But
might jump.
I know that it helps me with my son a great deal because he does need a lot of SE.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing gets done if you don't, kick his butt.
Yes.
Yes, because in Model G is the SE is launcher function that sort of like gets him going, gets him launched. So yeah, ENFJ and yeah, go on.
Launching is just a scientific term for kicking in the butt.
Yes.
And that's exactly what my husband does for me as an LII. I am launched by his TI. He really helps me get in a better logical place and kind of cool off some of my FE craziness and really be more systematic about things. And I think I appreciated that in my sister as well, but because it was her creative function, it wasn't as strong. And so I just relied on her for SE experiences. I still do that. When I am in a funk and I'm feeling really lazy and low, like I can call her up and like, get me out of the house. Come give me a kick in the butt. I'm being too lazy, and she's great for that. So I know the importance of the duality relationship, but it's interesting that if you've had that for most of your life, you don't actually seek it in a romantic nature. May I ask what type you married?
I'm married ILI.
Okay. So that's what we talked about last night was the kindred.
Yeah.
So she must be NI subtype, and you don't have as much of the aversion to the polar function as I do.
What do you mean by polar function?
Like TE for me.
Oh, okay.
It is just something that sometimes feels like a slap in the face.
Well, my mother is also ILI, so I grew.
Oh. You know how they think better than I do.
Well, I guess so.
I think that would help. If I knew where they were coming from, I probably wouldn't take it so personally.
There's something.
Yeah, I think.
Gone.
I think we've been through. I had the test that Ben knows about, which shows different, like percentage of different types, and not percentage, but how much of other types you have.
Is it not the Rhinin dichotomist test?
I was talking about Andrei's and Talanov's test.
Oh no, I don't think I know about that one.
You'll have to share it with us later.
Yeah, well, you do know, you just forgot. But anyway, it tells like how much of different type qualities you have and so on. So it's very.
I would love that. That's interesting.
Yeah, it's very descriptive. So actually, all of my accents beyond my own type usually have to do with the relations I had. So I had the kindred type mother, so I have a part of IEE in myself, and I had a dual father. I have a dual father, so I have a part of SEI in myself. And I have
SEI.
So my major accents were IEE, ESE, and SEI.
Right. I was just wondering when you said that did you say that your ESTP father meant that you became accentuated with SEI, or would
No, I'm saying that the dual relationship kind of put some impression on me, which is similar to its integral type.
Yeah, what is the integral type? Yeah, that's a concept.
I would say that they're different on different levels, but the default levels everybody is talking about is the informational one. So on the informational level, they are counted from the ENTP. And so the dual relationship has an integral type of ISFJ or SAI.
Is this from Golenko or is this different?
Yes, it's Golenko.
Okay. We envy your ability to be able to read it in the native language. We have to wait for things to be translated for us to get everything that Golenko has done.
Yeah. But just, I don't know how much it's classified or not, but it's just different types for different levels. For the psychological level, everything is counted from ENFJ. Then the social level, ESFP, and the physiological level, which I think it's not in Vickers' papers, but the people on the forum kind of speculated that it should be ESTJ, which kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
So the relations we have put their impression on us, and sometimes you may look like a different type, and that's the reason for it is the relations you used to have as a child, probably, or for your lifetime, like with your spouse.
Mm-hmm.
I know that being around ILI, I always end up going through a lot of NE.
Really?
What we end up discussing is basically NE matters.
Interesting.
How does that happen?
Because normally that would be your ignoring function. So.
The control function, but it's like the theoretical function for both, but all of a sudden it gets very important in the kindred relationship. You end up discussing real life and the possibilities. Just for the sake of possibilities, it may have absolutely no relation to what is important for you right now, but you end up learning a lot about unrelated things like life of giraffes or whatever.
Yeah, so
that's making me question my father's type, because I've always typed him as an ENTJ, but when we would have good conversations, that's how it went. He could be INTJ instead. Sorry, you were going to say something, Ben.
Actually, in the supervision relations, there is also a lot of NE, just because the type of integral type of the relation is from the side of supervisor. It's the INFP, which is also the basically NE type.
True. Okay. So that doesn't rule it out.
Yeah, it may be just one of the types with whom you have an NE relation.
That's fun.
I was just going to say to the audience that the control function, so the ignoring function, it's very strong with information, but it's very weak when it comes to implementation. So I was just thinking, yes, Maria's right, that you would have those two NI DOMs, INTJ and INTJ, would discuss lots of possibilities, but not actually do much about them.
Mm-hmm. There's just the fun of speculation together.
Yeah.
Well, and it helps bypass the conflict of FETE. You know, like if you just stay in that place.
Hi, Jeff. I don't know if you've met. Hi. I don't know if have you met Maria before?
Maybe.
Yeah. Jeff is ESFP.
This is an experiment too. I've got you. I've got you guys on my card, so.
Yeah, we can see the ceiling.
Yeah, we feel.
Yeah,
we feel like we feel like a cheap hooker looking at your ceiling. No, that's what.
Don't speak for people other than yourself, Ben. I don't know if the others feel that same way.
Can you see anything, Maria?
Probably I should get going, but.
Okay. That's okay. You've been very helpful. I learned so much.
That's what I remember about Maria. As soon as I comes in, she leaves.
Well, I'll say a
She has
little
to run
more.
away from me.
I think the first thing I remember about you is the cheeseburger joke. It was very good.
I don't even remember what the cheeseburger joke was, but it sounds like something I would say. So.
Well, about imposing your will on tasty cheeseburgers as a gamma male.
Ah.
What did I say about tasty cheeseburgers?
There was like, I think Alf was saying something about alpha males and imposing his will on people, and you said, as a gamma male, I like to impose my will on tasty cheeseburgers. That was very Texan.
Perfect.
Yeah, so anyway, as a Texas dweller, I can appreciate that.
Yes, that's right. Both Texans.
Interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah, she sounds Texan.
No. Sarcastic.
But Maria does write things like y'all in text.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't have a better camera view at the moment.
Anyway, see you guys later.
Goodbye, Maria. It was nice to meet you.
Yeah.
Because my iPad's on my seat on the passenger seat.
Okay. Also, are you driving at the moment, or are you stationary?
Yes, I am driving. Yes.
Oh wow. Wow.
Did you invite him to tell us about relationship with ISFP?
Yes. Yes.
He didn't tell me anything. He just posted the link.
He did.
Yeah.
A while ago.
Yeah. That's what we're doing, Jeff. You would just jump in, I would be like, why? What are we talking about?
No, I was driving, and I'm like, you know what? I was just listening to music, and I'm like, well, oh, wait, he sent me a link to a Hangout or something. Maybe I'd do that while I'm driving, so I did.
Cool.
Wow.
And then the thing said it was a Hangout on air. I'm like, I had a split second of, well, do I really want to go in? And then I did anyway.
Okay.
We're glad you're here.
It says here that anyway, we'll let Jeff. Before we get into the theory, we'll let Jeff talk about how do you think you get on with ISFPs, Jeff?
Well, first of all, because I can't tell when I'm speaking at the volume I am now, is that loud enough or too loud?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, because I can't. It's over there, so I feel like I should be like shouting or something, but I don't know how sensitive it is. Or is there like background noise or anything else is being picked up? So.
No, it's really clear, and you don't sound too loud.
Cool. Well, I don't even know, because I didn't even know it was going to do that. When I accepted the thing, automatically my car took it over where it was coming out of the car speakers with a little, like the hands-free phone thing.
Oh, weird.
So it just auto-connected. So I'm like, oh, that's cool. I didn't even know it could do that.
Yeah,
Magic.
Your car is Bumblebee from Transformers, isn't it, Jeff? Really advanced.
No, not Bumblebee. Come on. If I was going to be, if that would be one of the Transformers, that would have been a cooler car than Bumblebee.
Oh wow. What about the Bumblebee in the new films where he's like?
That sucked. Yeah.
Okay.
Talks through the radio. I mean, what kind of crap is that? The guy who played Bumblebee, the voice actor on the show, was available. He said he would have been willing to be in the movie, and no one even asked him. That whole thing was garbage. Like, the only thing that was good about those new Transformers movies was John Turturro, because he's an awesome actor.
Yes.
So.
Oh yes. Fantastic.
Everything he did in that, he steals the scene. But that and slow motion Megan Fox running. That was really, those were the two things. There are only two. Well, okay, I guess three things to watch the second Transformers. But I didn't watch any of the rest of them. I don't want to see Marky Mark fighting aliens either. That doesn't really get me going. I want him to get the Funky Bunch back together, but pretending he's an actor.
Quit pretending.
Yeah. But doing movies with Seth MacFarlane playing teddy bears and get back to what you do best. Early 90s rap.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember the line.
Anyway, what were we talking about?
We're talking about what they call mirror relationships. So it's like...
I have a great relationship with the mirror.
Oh my gosh.
Like the font.
ISFP is your mirror.
Yeah.
Do you know any ISFPs?
Is it really?
It is. Not your actual mirror. Come on.
I've known quite a few over the years. In my current life, I wouldn't say that I'm close to any ISFPs, although there are a few online that I occasionally talk to.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, like back in school when I was in theater, there was a ton of ISFPs. I mean, I think probably, I think in theater the three most common types of people were probably ESFPs, ENFPs, and ISFPs. I think that's just a guess, but that's just, you know, from what I know, and knowing the people, like, you know, anybody who wasn't stood out a little bit more as being a little bit different. Which is, of course, the irony of that is that the SPs are all trying to stand out and be different than everybody else, but in a what's it called, medium like that, we're all more alike. So it's like there's a comfort in like sort of knowing that the people around you are sort of understand you better than some people do, but then on the other hand, there's that competition of not wanting to be like everybody else. So
yes. So do you feel that you guys could relate, but not that there wasn't as much? They say that there's not as much openness in the communication between mirrors. That you relate. It seems like you're going to relate on a deeper level, but it's actually just more superficial because you go about things so different.
I don't know. I've struggled to say what the difference is. Like when people have asked me, you know, how do you tell between an ESFP and an ISFP? And I actually have a hard, because I feel like in the degree of extroversion that I'm closer to the middle, maybe. So
yeah.
I feel like we're, you know, right there, just on different sides, or either side of the same small fence. You know, so it's like it's not like a big leap back and forth. We're pretty much very similar, just a matter of degree of that particular, you know, preference. So I feel like it's more like you know, brothers and sisters, you know, in the same family. You know.
Jeff, you have a little story about, you mentioned this to me before, that you used to think you were an ISFP and then you went into some Facebook groups or some online groups and you saw the difference and say, hey, they're not like me at all.
Yeah, I mean, Crystal was actually among the people over a long period of time that helped me with that, because she was one of the people among many that you know, made videos and posted things about being an introvert. And what I found over time was the more that I saw of that, and the more I kept hearing things from introverts, the more I didn't feel like I was one. And I sort of looked at that as, well, you know, is it just me trying to be different again? You know, I want to be contrary and say I'm not like the other introverts, or am I really not an introvert? And then over time, I just sort of realized that I wasn't. I was actually in a way sort of using that as a crutch because of you know, my own like social awkwardness and anxiety and things like that. I was sort of using that as blaming introversion. You know, saying, oh, well, I'm not good at this stuff. Well, it's because I'm an introvert. So I had sort of like this excuse built in for that's just why I'm not good at that. I was just born that way, you know?
Sure. I'm sure a lot of people do that. That makes sense. It's kind of impressive that you can acknowledge that, though. Like, you know, lots of people are attached to that.
I can now. I'm almost 40, you know? It's like, you know, 10, 15 years ago, there's no way I would have. And people, when I first joined typology forums, that's the thing is there's obviously a large degree of difference in terms of knowledge and experience with typology and with people in general of the members of forums like that. And so some people are just going to, and of course the type people are matters too in terms of how they perceive you and how they're going to you know, what their attitude's going to be towards you. But I had people that from the beginning, pretty much from those forums, would tell me they thought that I seemed more like an extrovert, and I would ask them why. And the only like concrete things people came.
Oh, we lost you.
You know, you're just perceiving me different because it's all.
Sorry, Jeff, you're cutting out. Can you hear us?
Yeah. Well, I'll just I can talk a bit until he comes back, and then I'll let Jeff take over. It says something here that is an interesting idea. Where Victor talks about it's called a mirror relation because it says the words of one partner are often reflected in the actions of the other.
Ah, I like that.
And one mirror partner passively thinks about something, the other actively implements in real life. So I'm wondering, when you talk about your ENFJ brother, does he like do the things you talk about?
Yes. That's actually very true. And I think it's kind of strange because when we talk together, I think that's part of why we kind of finish each other's sentences sometimes, and why from the outside I have this sense that it probably looks like we understand each other better than I actually feel that we do. Does that make sense? And it's probably because like they say what we do and we do what they say. It feels like it's almost too obvious, you know, the things that he will bring out, I will kind of ignore it. Like, well, yes, of course, but, you know, let's focus on this. I don't know. Do you feel that way with the NTPs?
See, what happened there is I did an INTP thing, and I was thinking, and it stimulated an idea, and I thought intertype relations are a great way to confirm someone's type. Because if they relate to all the types the way
it says it should.
Yeah, like, so for instance, the way you relate to ENFJ, the way you relate to ESTJ, the way you relate to ESTP, then it sort of like helps to confirm that you're INFJ and not ENFP. People know that. And not INFP. And so it's a good way. And usually with like crazy identicals, like if people want to decide between INTP and INTJ, well, the difference is, well, what do you think of ESFP versus ESFJ? Because if you're an INTJ, you'll like ESFP more.
Yeah.
If you're INTP, you'll like ESFJ more.
I think I did a video hangout with Leon and his friend Dan, and Dan's friend is ENFJ. And I purposely, on that particular hangout, had in my mind that I was going to compare and see how I related to him, to see if I felt like, because sometimes I have those moments, because of like Jeff, I am more on a borderline of the E or I. It's like, maybe I'm an ENFJ, let's try this out. And the more he talked, the more I was convinced I'm an INFJ, because there were so many things that he would say that I'd be like, okay, I know what he's saying, but it probably has to do with being an intuitive dominant. You know, he would just judge things so harshly and come out and make assumptions or generalizations that I kept wanting to loosen and be like, well, let's not go there so quickly. And I think that's maybe one of the dichotomies that happens, where you talked about rationality and irrationality. I could feel it really strongly in that conversation with him.
Yeah, because like the EJ temperament is like to make a decision about someone, to like have a judgment.
Yes.
Victor calls it receptive adaptive, where I think it's like you take more information in, you're slower to form a judgment.
Right.
That's what, again, it's one of these things, very complex. Victor's stuff takes a heck of a lot of thinking about. So some of the stuff that Maria was mentioning, I've not encountered yet, and so my eyes were like, whoa,
I'm
that's
excited for the new stuff.
That's more INTP than me. It's like, it's like a ranking. It's like VNTP. Like Victor is like the top INTP.
That's awesome.
Like Victor and Linda Berens, and then like Dave as well, but like with computers. He's like, oh my god! Like Victor talks about INTPs wanting to simplify things, and like Dave Kersey Jr. Oh, he doesn't like being called Junior. Mark Kersey. He's like doing a categorization of everything in the whole
Yes.
universe. It's
Yes.
like how it relates to each other, like different levels of complexity and replication. And I sent it to Victor, and is this involution? And Victor give a big thumbs up. He's like a pure INTP.
That's amazing. Yeah, well, architect is the perfect term for you guys and the way your brain works. It's really cool.
For me, it's like architects of stories and characterization. It's hard work sometimes. What it was, he mentioned something very interesting. Dave Kersey, he said that he has a friend who's an ENTP, but he's actually more socially withdrawn than he is. But he says he's expressive in the way he interacts in the world. So whenever when people talk about introversion, extroversion, I always think, well, it's 4 kinds of introversion, 4 kinds of extroversion. It depends on the function. So for instance, INFJ, because even though they're an introvert, they've got that FE, they're going to be better socially than, say, ENTJ or ENTP, ESTP, because they've got the FE.
I think that's one of the things. Socionics does a good job of that, I feel, in trying to clarify extroversion versus introversion. And that is one thing that Kersey tried to do, but I don't feel was as successful as far as honing in on the differences. Like, you had to take it type by type by type to really understand what that introvert looked like in his book. But where Socionics focuses, like when you just do it with temperaments, it can be separated into 4 different types. You know, that makes more sense. Where you're an irrational introvert versus a rational introvert. Those types of things say a lot. And it is about what kind of information your brain processes and pays attention to the most. I think that's why if you just read Please Understand Me Too, and you read about ENFJs and INFJs, they just sound like one's extroverted, one's introverted, but they're basically the same thing. And you study Socionics, and that is obviously not the case. It is much more complex than that. And I appreciate those differentiations. I think it's important.
Yeah, with Kersey, it's like the ENFJ is more directive, and the INFJ is more withdrawn, and so it's just that expressive, reserved thing. But it's like I've suggested, I'm coming to the conclusion that he saw 4 personalities, and the rest was role enactment. So, for instance, he thinks that, I mean, like, so for instance, when he came out of the military, he did a psychology degree, and he went into the role of counselor. So his actual role enactment was counselor.
Right.
So it's like, and so if someone was, say, typing him from the outside, they might say, "Oh, it's
FI."
Yeah, it would be like an F. But if you, and so like this is where the different systems can come in. And if someone really knows what they're doing, like as a lot of type, they can say, "Oh, but the way he's approaching it is logical and INTP." You can see that the things they might emphasize might be different, and so you'd be, but superficially, so you could still see it. But yeah, Kersey's main thing, what I say to people about Kersey is his main contribution is working out someone's temperament. He was hugely detailed on the temperaments, how the temperaments taught, all of that. But then when he gets to the profiles, it still has these nice observations in there, like what I showed with INTP versus INTJ.
Yeah.
Like if you want to know about what TE and NI looks like, is like a practical example. If you read the INTJ profile, in Please Understand Me Too, it's all about contingency planning.
Yes.
And it's like it's that in action. It's thinking about how do we do these productivity things in the future if this goes wrong? What do we then do? And it's like super the planning of efficiency and what to do if things then go wrong. It's like all of these various and it's like okay, that would be what a pure INTJ would be like if they did a job that was like really NI and really TE. It would be like,
yeah, and that's not how the reality works. You know, like looking at ESTP versus ENFP. Okay, they're both EP, and he can focus on what makes them one an NF and one SP. But that, I don't know. I feel like they have a lot in common that Socionics will point to based on that EP, the temperament. But then the quadras do a better job of explaining why an ENFP is so different than an INFJ or an ENFJ. You know, Socionics does a much better job. The delta values, those are so different than beta values.
But those can be misleading as well, because somebody typed you as ENFP, and they confuse the quadra values with.
But this is why I think that happens. I think that happened because it was very clear that I am an intuitive dominant, that I am a feeler, and that I am a humanitarian, and that extroverted feeling and introverted feeling are both very, very strong for me. Now you look at Model G with Galenko, okay, intuitive dominant. Maria just talked about how sometimes NE will come out in the INFJ or the INTJ. And I spend a lot of time with INTJs, ENTJs, and that probably brings out some of that extroverted intuition like she talks about. And introverted feeling is what Galenko calls my creative. You know, that's different than Model A, and that's very argued. I think all that means is that it is how I base my decisions on my relationships when I'm interacting with people on a close one-to-one, they really matter to me basis. And what people first see is FE. You know, lots of people in the Type Me threads would say, oh, she's ESE or she's EIE. Like they could see my FE, but then when they heard my answers to my questions, I feel like I was in a very FI frame of mind. Like we were talking about what I value and I was explaining what I do.
Yeah.
So I don't know, that's kind of confusing because this says what is done rather than what is thought and or said. So if I'm saying it, then it would make it, I don't know how to explain, because I feel like I know for certain I'm different than FI users because it's always tied with TE, and TE being something that feels like a slap in the face to me guarantees to me I'm not an FI type. Does that make sense?
Yes, that does, because and Chris Montoya sees those functional pairings as well, and we'll talk about that when I interview him next week.
Fun.
He talks about those pairings of, like, as Victor described, the dual pairings. But yeah, in here, it's like this creative function really does serve the first, and it's so hard to see because it's bound up. So with me and with your INTP husband, is like, it's hard to see the NI. It's so connected, and it's like they're thinking about the future, but it's with logic, and so
and that's why Socionics, you're supposed to just always talk about it as blocked elements, not just individual elements. You know, like it is more useful to talk about me as NIFE and blocked together versus the other things that are blocked. So
I like these blocks. I like these blocks.
Only problem is I can't use these to do your nifty inner type relationships.
Oh, you can.
I mean, I can, but now it's 1 to 5 or 5 to 1, or you know what I mean? It's a different number.
Which one is it now? So, which intertype relation do you want to look at? Is it mirror?
Sure, we're talking about that today.
Yeah, so 5 to 8. Now, of course, with this, there's 2 stumbling blocks for people here. One is they've got to get with the program with the Galenko codes, because I couldn't really fit in doing it like with 2 letters. So I just thought if I could like fit in 1 letter. and also the way that it is going to be like his creative function. So it's going to be pointing to I then P rather than I and
I need
L.
to stick with model A and the squares that we're doing right now. Before
Yes. Yeah, that's
I
right.
really will get lost.
Yes, it's tough for me as well. So if we go back to this one, but yeah, I'm like this with like we got blocks here, like you got here like super id row, and it's like, well, what does that really mean? What is it really? Because it's just like, again, Auschwitz doing all these things that are metaphorical. Again, this is one of these things where I don't not particularly enamored of ENTPs, where they'll like get this comparison, and it's not a very good comparison. It's just like, oh, it's because it's like it's in Freud. Well, I think Freud's a lot of Freud is nonsense.
So you don't necessarily you don't really like BB's model, wasn't he ENTP?
I don't know, but
is it B or BB? I don't remember.
I don't know. I mean, but I think he would probably say B if it sounds a bit posher.
Okay.
I don't know. But that looks good. But I was looking at the BB model. It was like really long, and then when it said my dual wasn't ESFJ, I thought, nah, I'm not going to read it then, because it contradicts what I already believe. And it's like that human nature.
You'd already decided you agreed with the other.
Yeah, because it contradicted me. And it's like people have a tendency to do that. Like they'll watch news channel, but they'll watch the news channel that fits their political beliefs. Like I ain't watching MSNBC anytime soon.
Right.
Even though, because, so anyway, the blog.
Would you rewrite this? Like, would you feel like you needed to rewrite this chart? It has like the preferred terms, but this was before Galenko, wasn't it?
Well, yeah. I mean, like,
do you prefer break instead of ignoring, or halt instead of ignoring now?
I actually prefer break, but I came up with my own, calling it allergic.
Yes. But see, that's different because I don't consider myself NE allergic.
No, but you are TE allergic though. I mean, if we go
oh, you're saying the vulnerable's allergic. I'm sorry. I didn't see.
Yeah.
Yes, true. I do. That is I agree with that. I thought you meant like the ignoring.
Yeah. And so do you feel like ESTJs could bring you out in a rash?
Yes, they could. I just have learned what to appreciate about them. And I think as FE subtype Enneagram 2, I'm always looking for a way to make something more harmonious between.
Yeah.
And so I will come home and then complain about the ESTJ. But when I'm with them, then I've found a way to work things out.
I think that is such an NF answer. I have learnt what to appreciate about them. That's so new age.
That's just the way my brain works. What would you say about your, let's see, I have to figure this out. I'm going to go back to your chart. So you're going to be F.
Oh, do you want to see mine?
Yeah, let's do. Yeah, SC polar. So are you really that allergic to SE? How do you talk to Jess as often as you do? How do you, does your brain just shut off when you're not listening anymore?
It's, if he's with another S, it can be a bit much, but it's like we have so many shared interests.
It helps.
It sort of bridges the gap. But I tell you, the things I say about artisans. I am like so bigoted towards artisans. It's like the default thing is like, do not trust them. They could do anything. Even Kersey said like they will do anything to like get what they like. And remember, he like studied these people because they were like in the criminal detention. Like he was like juvenile delinquents and things, but also he also had a respect for artisans as well, because his parents were artisans and he knew them in the military.
Yeah.
And he had a brother. I think, yeah, I can't remember what he said in private. I won't mention that. I don't know which is which. If we go back to, if we then go back to, so you can
Yeah, that was good.
like you can look at that. I'll click on your square, so in the audience will see you, and then while I talk about yes, that thing about the mirror partner thinks about something, the other one will actively implement it, and then it says here, however, the implementation is never up to expectations. So,
Right.
like what you were saying about the difficulties you have.
Yes. Yes. We will. I've had that over and over with my brother. Yeah.
And then I'll just say like the next 4 bullet points, because it's like over this overall theme. It's like the mirror image is only a reflection, therefore mirror partners try to correct each other's actions from their own point of view, and because of that there can be confusion and even criticism and reprimands, and each attempts to adjust the behavior of the other. Each attempt to adjust the behavior of the other will usually fail. So does that sound like?
Yes. Yes. I've given up trying to adjust his behavior, but I remember when we were talking a lot more before he was married and he was single, and he would talk to me about relationships. I would try to adjust kind of the way that he went about it, and that was very frustrating for both of us, because just like Maria had said, our minds work so differently. He's focused on a different outcome than I am, so it's tricky. Yeah, that makes sense.
And then we've got the verbal communication section. We have it says there, if you consider the verbal aspects of communication, mirror relationships could be called relationships of constructive criticism. And I'll just like summarize it, because then each person sees one half of the same issue, so it's always interesting to hear what the mirror partner thinks regarding. All right, okay, so each person sees one half of the same issue, so it's always interesting to hear what your mirror partner thinks regarding a particular subject matter. So do you think that?
I think that's excellent, because I will think that I've thought something all the way through, and when I talk to him about it, he emphasizes something. I mean, like that guy in the video chat with Leon, Dan, he puts it in generalizations, but he does it in a way where I'm like, well, that is one opinion. That is a structured, I can understand your logic. I know why you're judging it that way. And so it adds to my information, but I don't necessarily agree with it. I will understand it and say, yeah, that makes sense to me, but I'm more comfortable staying open.
Do you think it is a relationship of constructive criticism?
I think that's both of our intentions. I don't know how the other person receives it.
What we got here? In the event of completing work together, there is mutual correction and clarification.
I think that goes back to what I was saying at the very beginning of the video, where I feel like we talk in circles because we keep clarifying. But it seems like it's over minute things, you know, like...
Yeah, it says here, criticism is easily understood and is often considered constructive. That might be, I think that though might vary with type. So for instance, I would imagine that 2 logical types would be more constructive, although we sort of referred to one INTJ yesterday who's not necessarily the most constructive person in the world.
Sure. Do you find ENTP's input to be constructive criticism towards you?
If I can decide whether they're trolling me or not.
Yeah. I know. Well, and I find that I have the same similar disclaimer that I'm saying, well, sure, it's constructive if I feel like he hasn't already judged that he knows better than I do.
Yeah, I don't really know enough ENTPs. It's just I'm also judging them by the comedians. Of the comedians that I like, and I know they're ENTPs, they have this dark side to them where they are like, for instance, I used to like Bill Maher. You know what Bill Maher's like? It's not exactly FI brilliant. And then even Douglas Adams was really like Douglas Adams. Like, but like, I'd say this story. Here's an example of his FI polar. Is two examples. He's even accused of saying your characters are not very deep. And it says, well, it's about ideas, it's not about the characters. So it's like not really interested in characterization. But the main thing was, he's writing the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy radio series. He has to write 6 episodes. Is at the end of the 4th episode, he goes to his friend John Lloyd and says, "You got to help me. I don't know what else to write. We've got to write 2 more episodes." Now, he was living in his house, and John Lloyd was supporting him, right? And so already he owes John Lloyd from that. And then John Lloyd helps him to finish Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, right? So we think, okay, then when the radio series does really well, and then the book comes around, and the agreement was that they would write the book together. But then Douglas Adams says to John Lloyd, "On your bike, I'm going to write the book on my own." Now, I would think for a lot of FI people, they would say, you know, this guy supported me, he helped me finish the radio series, I've got to write the book with him, not just betray him like that.
Right.
And that is the sort of thing that I will criticize ENTPs for.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think it's exactly like she was saying. It's that romanticizing of your role function. You know?
Even though I can see Douglas Adams' point of view, like he wrote most of it, but the point is, he was supported by John Lloyd. He lived in John Lloyd's house, and in his hour of need, he went to John Lloyd and said, "Help me to finish the series."
Right.
So he should have just sucked it up and finished the book with him and say, "Well, you can write with me, but you ain't getting 50%. That's what I would have done.
Right. Absolutely. That's only fair.
So, and I think that might have been one of the reasons why their book finished early after like the first 4 episodes, because then he couldn't get sued because he actually never novelized any of the new material from. And also another example of Douglas Adams being short. There was all this myth of, oh, it would leave everything to the last moment. And so the myth was he would like leave it to the last moment. He would write it really quickly, because then that makes him look better. Because, oh wow, this is really good for something that's been written so quickly, right? So that's one myth. But then that totally contradicts other things where he wrote about, oh, it's all the crafting and all the stuff and all the meticulous. We can't have it both ways, Douglas. You can't write something really quickly and then talk about all of the crafting. And I can see all of the crafting and all the meticulous stuff that's going on. So that's just part of the mythology, and those are the sort of things that I think ENTPs are. I don't know that many, but like Tesla as well, where I would say to him like 200% genius, like 10% con man, because like if you like look on Wikipedia, it's like things like he marketed to the US military a death ray that would destroy whole armies. Really? If you put that in Star Trek, they would say rejected.
Right.
That script.
That's what made him fun, though.
But he was like, yeah, but like, so you got to watch these ENTPs.
Do you think it's because we both are the creative subtype that we're more critical of our mirror? Because there are moments where I've talked to ENFJs online who are a little stronger in SE, and I like them easier. There's I find what they say to be more constructively helpful than some other ENFJs.
I see myself, like I said, I think INTPs see ENTPs as they're half envious of them and half shocked by their inappropriateness.
It would be interesting to hear an ENTP talk about INTPs and an ENFJ talk about INFJs.
ENTPs would probably say INTPs are boring. Don't do it.
Yeah, and maybe ENFJs would say INFJs are not assertive enough. You know, that they say things, but they don't act on them.
Yeah, they would probably say INFJs need a kick up the arse to get something done.
Right.
It's like ENFJs are more like, they've got that EJ temperament of getting things done.
Yeah.
Like TFE dominant. But I think INTP sees ENTP as a mixed bag, and they will see, oh, they're using extroverted intuition really well and being like really popular, and actually see the energy of them, and maybe unknowingly, like, because the way they act, they can get things done. But again, their inappropriateness is a reminder of our inappropriateness. Like I made a mistake. I mean, people might have. I mean, even about half an hour ago, I made the mistake of that when Jeff arrived. I said, "We're a hooker looking at his ceiling." I mean, that was a bit close to the line. And I think if I was an ENTP, I would be making more comments like that.
Right, right. Well, they gotta slip out once in a while. The Eddie's still there.
Right. So, what we got? Oh yeah, here we go. Verbal communicate. Oh, I think no, we didn't that. Oh yes, each person. So you do think it's constructive criticism?
Yeah.
With.
I think it can be.
What we got in the event of a mutual person? Yeah, criticism easily understood, often considered constructive. Now, what is put here is, Victor's not good for family life. For family life, these relationships are not desirable. Minor goals will coincide for both partners, but global, far-reaching and long-term goals often do not. Methods of achieve. Right, so I can imagine that INTP would want to like read their book, and the ENTP would like go off and do lots of different things.
Yeah.
And again, would that be who is doing the housework in that relationship, where they both don't want to do it, and the ENTP is they want to do all their crazy stuff.
Yes. ENFJs and living with INFJs, I think it would be fine. I think we would probably work out all right, but it is still just a matter of feeling that imbalance. There's like an inequality there of expectations on the other person that neither one feels the other one is reciprocating.
If you had, you know, when it said that add in a third person, it was the dual of one and activate with the other. Mm-hmm. I could imagine someone could make that a requirement of like a maid. They might want that type.
Yes, for yours it's the maid. What would it be for me? You have the ESTP. It would bring the fun. It would bring the action. It would get us off the couch from talking for hours.
An ESTP maid. That's going to be quite a rare combination.
No, the ESTP would not be there as a maid for us.
That would be like that chick, that older woman in. Did you ever see 2.5 Men?
Yeah. Yeah. Uh-oh, you frozen. You froze.
Did you ever see 2.5 Men with the housekeeper, where she was a little bit bossy?
Yes.
With Charlie Sheen, so she might be that type.
Mm-hmm.
But I forgot that. Not desirable minor goals. Coincide. And then we got methods of achieving these goals would also remain different. I think you might have mentioned that.
Yes.
The methods are different with the ENFJ brother. Right. That is, I think that's it.
Great.
We are covering the heck out of these.
You got it.
Relationships.
Thank you, Ben.
Right. So if I stop now. Although, as a disclaimer, folks, I'll say that Maria really, she opened up a can of like INTP on me. That's was by Victor. That's some complex stuff she was coming out with. Integral type. I need to study that. That's hard.
I do too. I know. I want to know it. Now you have to share. If she gives you access, I need it.
Yeah. Okay. Here we go. So stop it now. So goodbye, folks.